America's immigration system was openly restrictive and racialized. Asians were restricted, in many cases almost excluded. They literally had something called the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, and it literally barred Chinese laborers and became the first major federal law restricting them. So in 1882, when my grandfather was practicing law, fresh out of slavery, Chinese weren't allowed to come here like that. In 1924, immigration law created the national origin quota that favored Northern and Western European. They didn't want Italians, okay? They didn't want you here. They didn't want people from Arab lands. They didn't want none of y'all, okay? They excluded immigrants from Asia, India, couldn't come. Africa especially, Caribbean too. So shout out to Bebe. So before 1965, I want y'all to listen to this very carefully. Before 1965, America wasn't this open, multicultural immigration hub that people pretend it was. It was black and white. America was a black and white country. And in 1960, white Americans were nearly 89% of the population. That's what it was. Now, you can say what you want, but do we have the crime problem that we have now? Do we have the issues that we have now with the culture? Do we have the degeneracy? You see? It was 89% white, and the rest was mostly the remaining non-white population was black. Now you had a teeny percentage of Africans. Okay, they were only about 35,000 of them here in the whole country. Okay, and in the United States, Mexican-born immigration was also smaller. In 1960, they had about 576,000 Mexicans in this country. I want you to keep that in mind. Think about that. That's a tiny percentage. Matter of fact, they had something called Operation Wetback, which was an example of how they would systematically and periodically remove Mexicans from the country. During the 1930s, Mexicans they call it repatriation. Hundreds of thousands of Mexicans and Mexican Americans, which means they were citizens born in the United States. They pushed them back across the country. So they were Americans. They were citizens, but they weren't considered Americans. You see that? You understand that? Isn't that amazing when you really start understanding the philosophy? Shout out to Madman 9. The Mexican citizens born here as Mexican Americans, yeah, you might be a citizen, but you're not an American. You got to go back to Mexico. Damn. Black Americans, on the other hand, are Americans. And we were Americans before we were citizens. But bottom line is, in the 1950s, Operation Wetback, it targeted Mexican workers again under Eisenhower administration. So when people act like immigration enforcement is new, it's not. America has periodically opened and closed the door depending on who it is that they want to send home. And so they've periodically, about every 70 years, they push Mexicans back to Mexico. This is, look, I know we got some Mexican folk, Latino, I know you listen, this is your history. And so that's why when we hear stuff like LULAC and the fact that you all, your leaders wanted to fight to be white, they will never accept you. And any white person that's being honest will tell you that. It's best just to go ahead and be on your own. But here's the thing. The Hart-Celler Act came in the wake of all that. And this is an act that came about in 1965. It was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, the 36th president of the United States. And it came in the wake of the 1964 Voting Rights Act. Or should I say the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And it ended, the Hart-Celler Act, it ended the old national origin quota that I talked about. And that opened the door for immigration from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. None of these people were here like that, okay? When we look at those old pictures of those black people out there protesting and fighting for their rights in the 1950s, the reason you don't see Latinos and all these other folks, because they weren't here. And that's what you need to understand, okay? So because when black and brown and Asian immigrants say we built America, they need to understand something. That at that time, when America was built and we were doing all that war fighting, right? You weren't here. Not in any significant numbers. It was foundational Black Americans who had already fought and marched and sued and bled and died and organized and forced America to confront its racial laws. So by 1965, America was already built. Who would disagree with that? By 1965, we had already fought the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, the Mexican-American War, the Spanish War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War. We'd already become a global superpower. We had already developed massive cities, highways, railroads, ports, suburbs, airports, factories, universities, hospitals, banks. We had a thriving music and film industry, military bases, and international influence. What did you build? Shout out to Chang G. So by 1965, America had already had automobiles and airplanes and air conditioning, radio, recorded music, interstate highways, skyscrapers. We're already deep in the space race. NASA's Gemini program had already flying missions to try to prepare for Apollo, the Apollo moon landing. We're already on the way to space. By 1965, when we just started letting you all in, Black American culture had already gone around the world. Jazz had gone around the world. Blues had gone around the world. Gospel, soul, R&B, rock and roll had gone around the world. We had B.B. King, Otis Redding, Motown. We had Black athletes, Black entertainers, Black soldiers, Black scholars, preachers, organizers, doctors, lawyers, and inventors. By the time 1965 came around, we already had Frank Sinatra as an American. He was already famous. Hollywood was already famous. American music was already famous. American universities were already famous. So what part of that did you immigrants build? Because see, that was before the modern post-1965 immigration wave. So what was that little Haitian lady talking about? Again, when people say immigrants built America, my question is simple. What exactly was left for you all to build? Joining an already built country isn't the same as building the country from the ground up. Moving into a house, okay, isn't the same as laying the foundation, cutting the wood, pouring the concrete, wiring the wall, and paying for the original cost. That's the distinction. So immigrants didn't build America in the way they like to claim. America was built by settlers and slaves, some Black, some white. It was built by free Black people and enslaved Black people. It was built by foundational Black Americans and heritage white Americans. It was built by people who were here when the country was being formed, expanded, defended, industrialized, and transformed. Immigrants came here later. They benefited from all that hard work. Somebody type work harder. So the next time one of these immigrants say, we built America, ask them, which America are you talking about? Must be talking about South America, Central America. Because by the time the modern immigrants start coming to what is called North America, i.e. the United States, in 1965, America had already been America for a long time. You understand? Now, why do they see that? And I know this is long-winded, but I'm moving fast. We're not even 3 hours in. Why do they see that? Somebody type the immigrant gaze in the chat room. Somebody type the immigrant gaze in the chat room. See, the truth is many immigrants see themselves through the immigrant gaze. They identify as immigrant, as Haitian immigrants, Jamaican immigrants, Nigerian immigrants, Somali immigrants, Syrian, Mexican, or whatever their national background is, before they identify through the American racial category that they should be designated for, okay? So as far as the Haitians and the Jamaicans and the Nigerians and the Somalians even, they see themselves as immigrants before they see themselves in the category they should fall in of Blackness, okay? And this requires, I'm gonna explain it to you, okay? You're gonna learn something. Somebody type learn something in the chat room. If you're a person from Haiti, Jamaica, or Nigeria, you grew up in a country where Black people are the overwhelming national majority. Haiti is 95% Black. Jamaica is overwhelmingly Black. Nigeria is an African country with more than 250 ethnic groups, but it isn't a country where Black people function as a tiny racial minority inside a white majority state. So when you grow up in those countries, race doesn't operate the same way it operates in the United States. In those countries, the people in power usually look like you. The police and the politicians and the judges and the teachers look like you. The people who don't look like you are usually outsiders and visitors or the minority. So you grow up as part of the in crowd. But in the United States, foundational Black Americans are and always have been a tiny minority. Black people are only about 14% of the US population. And here's what you need to understand. Only about 3/4 of that, or about 9 or 10%, are foundational Black Americans, because the rest are immigrants and children of immigrants, which make up about 25% of what we know now as the Black American population. And that's why it's important for us to delineate. See, and what that means is we are too small in number to have the luxury of organizing primarily by tribe, village, or island, language, or religion. Whether you're a Muslim or in the Nation of Islam or Southern Baptist from Pascagoula, Mississippi, you are still a foundational Black American. We understand that politically and socially, we have to unify around our Blackness, because that's how we maintain power. Somebody type power. That's how we maintain visibility. That's how we have a collective voice, which we use in this country when we're outnumbered.